Moved down here, went to NC State as well. I've been with the Bulls off and on since 2005. Also worked at Major League Baseball with the Arizona Diamondbacks and worked out in Winston-Salem for 2 years with the team out there. Fun fact, I was an assistant baseball coach here at Millsbrook High School for 1 year back in the mid-2000s.
What was your record?
I don't remember. I don't remember. I was assistant coach, so. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Ashley Larson. I am the Assistant Director of Retail, specifically transitioning into e-commerce sales. I am originally from Florida. I graduated from Florida Gulf Coast University in Fort Myers and worked for the Miracle and Spring Training Facility for the Twins before joining the Bulls in 2016. And so now I work in retail, do some baseball camps, a lot of stuff here and there, but yeah, that's me.
Hey guys, I'm Faith Inman. I'm the Promotions Director with the Bulls. This will be my fourth full-time season with the Bulls coming up. I interned with the Bulls back in 2011 and 2012. I went to William Peace University, and I'm from a small town in North Carolina, which is about halfway between. And yeah, Triangle's great. I help plan the entertainment and try to put on a show for everybody.
I'm Chip Allen. I'm the Assistant General Manager of Sales, so sponsorship, tickets, all falls in my purview. I went to the University of Texas with a BS in advertising. I was in, marketing for about 12 years, where I did new business for a lot of agencies. Had midlife crisis, decided to go into baseball, which is far worse hours. But
He's much older than all of us.
I'm much older than everybody else. What else do I need to tell you about it? I've been 7 seasons with the Bulls. Started out in sponsorship. There you go. All right, you want to get the questions? Do you guys want to ask the questions, or you just want us to go down the list and read them? Do you even remember the questions you asked?
No. What do you guys want to talk about first?
Are you all here because you love sports? What do you love about sports?
Fun playing them.
You love playing sports.
I want to learn how to market.
Do you love the strategy of sports?
Speak up. I want to learn how to market.
You want to learn how to market?
Yeah.
All right. What does anybody else want to get out of this? Huh? Say again. A nice suit. All right, so we want to market, we want a nice suit. Anybody else want to get anything
Signature ballpark food.
Huh?
Signature ballpark food.
We've got it.
All right, yeah, we definitely. So,
How many of you have been to a Bulls game?
that's a good question.
Raise them high. Okay, we gotta change this.
That's not bad. What are the things that you liked when you were out there? What are the things that you didn't like? Start there.
The big bull in the outfield.
Big bull in the outfield.
Yeah.
You know where that came from?
Not a clue.
You guys,
I was gonna say, have you ever heard the movie Bull Durham?
No.
Raise your hand if you've seen the movie Bull Durham. Oh my. Oh my.
Exactly.
Raise your hand if you know who Kevin Costner is.
I've heard the name.
For the name. Okay.
Oh. What, Scott, you want to give some detail on the Bulls?
So a little background of the Bulls is, at the time that minor league baseball was starting to become a little bit bigger than your this is hard to describe to people that weren't alive back then. Kind of small town, bunch of people hanging out at a ballpark, maybe 1,000 people at a game tops. As that was becoming a thing, a movie called Bull Durham came out. It was released in 1988, and Kevin Costner was the lead actor in it. And then Susan Sarandon was his guest co-star, excuse me. That kind of blew up the world of minor league baseball. The whole movie, the premise of it was on the life that is a player in minor league baseball, on a bus traveling, through the night to these small towns and not being really paid well or anything like that. And so that kind of blew up minor league baseball and made it a little bit more mainstream. Our owner bought the team in the early 90s, and we moved out of the old ballpark in Durham called the Durham Athletic Park, and we moved into where we play now, the Durham Bulls Athletic Park. We opened the stadium in 1995, and then in 1998 we went to AAA. So in 95, when we opened the ballpark, we were in single A. If you need Braves fans, we're affiliated with the Braves. We're a single high A team for the Braves. And in 98, we went to AAA with the then Tampa Bay Devil Rays. From a marketing standpoint, at some point somebody figured out perhaps we should drop the word devil from our team name. That would be a little better. So now we're the Tampa Bay Rays. And so in '98, the stadium expanded to have additional seats. You had to have 10,000 fixed seats back then. It was a little bit more mandatory than it is now to meet AAA standards. So if you've been to the ballpark, all the seats in the outfield and that building in right field, which is called Diamond View 1, opened in '98-ish. The big building in left center field, Diamond View 2, opened in 2008. What do you think we called the big building in left field? Diamond View 3. Yeah, we got marketing geniuses over there in Durham. And so that's kind of the track of the ballpark, and the team kind of goes really kicked off with the movie. And by the same token, and Chip and Brian can get into this as well, the business of professional baseball, minor league baseball, changed a lot during that time frame. When you went to a sporting event, you'd go with 4 or 5 buddies or a family, and you'd sit on a row of seats, and you have to lean over and talk to your buddy that's on the end of the aisle or whatnot. Having group picnics and things like that, big birthday parties at a stadium, entertaining large groups of clients, that wasn't a thing back then. Whereas now, that's actually a very high percentage of our crowd is not there just to watch the game. They're there for the birthday party, they're there for the company outing, they go up to the bar and hang out. And so that's kind of a little bit of where the game has started from and where it's gone to now, and it continues to evolve, obviously, just like any business. But Brian can talk about kind of the ticket sales of that and how that connects with marketing and trying to convince, right? There's so many, think of all the different things y'all have to choose from on a weekend or a weeknight during the summer to do, right? You've got the Golf Shack stuff where you can go out and hit golf balls. You can go to a Hurricanes game, you can go to a Bulls game, you can go to a soccer game, you can go to a movie, or you can just sit at home and do nothing and watch the game on television, right? So we're constantly having to try to convince people to come to a game.
I was saying we probably should set it up with the business of sports. So you may love a sport, but that doesn't mean you're going to be great at working within sports. You got to love the business of sports because it's sales driven. What do we say? About 80% of our staff are on the sales staff. So if you're looking to get in, that's probably one of the first places you'll make a stop. But more specifically, tickets is what makes everything go around. You think of it as a hub. If we don't have people in the seats, if they don't come to the games, then we don't get any retail money, we don't get any food and beverage money, and we certainly don't get any sponsorship money. So everything starts with tickets. So we have to, our number one job every year is try to figure out how to fill those seats to capacity, right? That's the basis of it. Being passionate about baseball, being passionate about hockey or football doesn't make you a great candidate to work in sports. A lot of things, because you don't watch the games. It helps if you love the game, but it's not the end all be all. But so tickets is probably a great place to start of kind of what that looks like, how we go about filling the seats, how we come up with different things every year to entice more people.
Absolutely. To answer your question about the bull, started with the movie. It didn't exist before the movie. They made it as a movie prop, and we kept it ever since. And we've had different versions of it since that movie came out. It was a cool, unique prop that they wanted to use in the movie, and we said, hey, we like it. We kept it. So that was the answer to the bull question. I know it was long-winded, but that was the original start.
That was the original question, but then I knew that it wouldn't have mattered if I said it. We didn't report back.
Anyway, so yes, ticket sales, it really is the lifeblood for how we and any sports franchise is going to work. If you don't have fans, they're not coming out to the stadium, they're not watching your games, you're not successful, and you don't have a business. From our standpoint, we are selling constantly. Even though we only play the game on the field for 5.5 to 6 months, depending on how well we do with playoffs or anything like that, we are always selling 365 days a year. And it is a full-time, full-year-round job for all of us. We don't just open the gates and 10,000 people show up. We start marketing for the new season. Yeah, so this season, upcoming season, the 2020 season for us, we started marketing for that in July. So we've been marketing that for 4+ months already. And that starts with season tickets from our standpoint. We have literally over 1,000 season ticket holders. We just talk about folks who are coming out to that ballpark every single day. that we need to make sure that we get them back on board for the following year, get them signed up with their best seat locations and their payment terms and all that kind of stuff to make sure that they're happy and ready to go. And we want to start that while they're in the stadium and enjoying our product. It's a lot easier to talk to somebody when they're already engaged and enjoying it, as opposed to going back to them in winter when they're going to Hurricanes games or Carolina basketball games, Duke basketball games, whatever it may be. They kind of lose our attention because they're thinking about whatever they're doing at that time, whatever sport they're enjoying at that point. So if we can start that conversation while they're in our stadium and while they're liking what's going on, it's a lot easier process for us. So we start with our renewals for each year starting in July. We still have a month and a half to almost 2 months of our season left, but we're talking to them about that next season and getting it going. We'll set that running through pretty much October, when then we'll start new sales at that point. So we'll put all of our marketing efforts in going into the fall about talking about new season and new sales for the 2020 season. And that's when our sales reps, that's when the guys who are outside in the community talking to people face to face really get after it. We did a good job making sure that I get our people back to the stadium. Now we got to go out and find new ones each and every single year. So mid-fall is when we really kick up again from a new sales standpoint. We've got folks talking about season tickets. We got folks calling folks who've been out to the ballpark before but maybe don't have plans with us, talking about all the perks and benefits of it. Our group sales folks are going out to talk to anybody who wants to be part of a group. I know you guys have classes coming out for one of our education days coming up in the spring. Our group sales team is working to put all those different types of theme nights together, work hand in hand with the marketing team to find groups that want to come out for specific game nights that we've designed and to entice those people to come out. So that's what their full-time job is, just to talk to as many people as they can, whether that be on the phone, face-to-face, email, you name it. We're finding as many different ways as we can get in front of people to show them what our product is, because that's the only way we're going to get all these people out to the ballpark each and every year. We've got to get about half of our tickets sold, half of our goals sold before we even open for our first game of the year each year, in order to make sure that we stay on track to get where we need to be.
So, ask a good question here. Does anybody know how many people, if we sold out every game, well, first of all, how many games we actually have that we play in? Does anybody know that?
Anybody want to take a guess?
87.
Close.
Close, but Price is Right's rule, you're over. So we have 70 games. That's a lot of games that we got to fill.
Most of any professional sport.
We consider it sellout at 10,000. So that's 700,000 tickets we got to figure out how to get offloaded. A normal year, how many do we sell? About 500, and we'll just say 530 to 540 is how many tickets we actually sell a year. Because Monday through Wednesdays are a little bit tougher. Thursdays and Sundays are really good crowds. Fridays and Saturdays are usually solid. Sorry.
Yep.
That was a point of reference.
Yeah. And so from our standpoint, our attendance is going to be made up of pretty much in 3 equal parts if we're doing our job. A third of any attendance is going to be through season tickets and packages, people who are coming out repeatedly over the course of the year. Another third is going to be made up of groups, people who are coming out one time for a specific purpose, whether that be with their school, a church, Little League, their company, whatever that group is. And then the final third is going to be the casual individual buyer. Somebody went online, bought a ticket, they walked up to our box office windows that night and wanted to buy a game ticket, and they're at our ballpark. So if we're doing our job right, the more we do in season tickets and groups in advance just helps our attendance at the end of the day. Can't always rely on individual buyers. Weather doesn't always cooperate with us. We're an outdoor sport, so it gets hot, it gets rainy, or whatever it may be, cold in the spring. That can affect how our individual ticket buyers come out to our games. So the more we can do on a season ticket standpoint, the more we can do on a group standpoint in advance, the better off we will be on any given year. And we're booking folks, like I was saying, 6, 8, sometimes 10 months in advance of their game dates to come out to the ballpark, because that's where our demand is right now. Scott had mentioned the newer trends for baseball parks is not sitting in the seat and enjoying the game for 70 games. It's how can we hang out with our friends and be social and have group areas, hospitality, food, beverage, special unique perks. And that's what we really thrive on right now. When we put group packages on sale, our picnic areas, our luxury suites, things like that, we start a wait list. I mean, we're talking to folks 8 months out trying to pick specific dates, and they're already, I mean, we've got dates that are already booked up from that standpoint.
So what are we at? 60+%
Yeah,
ready
we-
for groups sold
Yeah.
going into next season.
Yeah, for our
We have
hospitality
100%.
areas, our private picnic areas, we'll have long-standing clients for 10 plus years. They'll give us 3 or 4 dates and they'll be booked up because that's how popular these type of packages are. And it really helps move the needle from our standpoint because we're talking groups that range in size from 30 to 1,000 at one time. And we've got to get creative and talk to those folks about how we can best fit those guys into our stadium on any given day.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
To piggyback off that, part of the big thing that we have to focus on in the off season is planning for the season. So planning out a promo calendar. How many parks are we going to do? Are we going to do Stranger Things night, Star Wars? The bigger theme nights, the pop culture type things that would bring fans that wouldn't otherwise come to the ballpark to hear. And that kind of goes up along with what Brian was saying with walk-up tickets. We try to theme out all of our graphics. We try to have specialty jerseys, which Ashley.
We'll go into what that means theme out of the graphics.
Yeah, so if we do Stranger Things night, we would do, Demogorgons for the opposing team, or the kid would be Will or Mike might be a headshot for a player. We use the fonts in all of our templates that we use for our headshots.
I was going to say, because why this is so important, go back to the marketing question, is that people come out for minor league baseball for a lot of different reasons, but a lot of them don't come out because it's baseball. They come out because it's a group event, the company's bringing them out, it's turnkey. They come out because of Stranger Things night, or it's Star Wars night, or it's swim night, or one of these other nights that we do. They come out with groups and family, and they come out because it's their kid's first game, or their kid's going off to college, or whatever the reasons. There are 1,000 different reasons. We have 80 different types of beers out there, so a lot of people come out because they love the craft brew. So 1,000 different reasons. So we always have to come up with innovative ways to figure out how to get them out again, right? And so part of doing that is our in game. So once you come and you sit down, the show starts, right? We got to make sure that people are entertained from the first pitch all the way through the end. Here's kind of prove my point. We're kind of recession proof, meaning that if our team is horrible, people still show up. I think one of our worst teams ever, we were 18 games below 500, and that was our best attendance year at what, 546 or something? 554. 554. There you go. So it didn't matter that our team was really kind of crap on the field. It mattered that what we did in stadium as far as what Faith does and going out and selling the tickets, that's what matters. I think my first year, the Bulls have always been a very successful team on the field. So my first year here, we went to the playoffs and we were doing sellouts all the way through August, and I'm like, man, the playoffs are gonna be awesome. So we went from 10,000 every night down to 3,500. Everybody else had something else to do. Little Johnny had, football, and they had college sports that are now in the scenes, and it wasn't really on the schedule, and nobody cared anymore. It's kind of confusing, but that's the minor league level. In the Hurricanes, who's been to a Hurricanes game in the past 10 years, right? Past couple of years, this year and last year were fine, but you go back a few years, people didn't show up. Why didn't they show up? Because they weren't winning. You gotta, if they win, you're a marketing genius. If they lose, you're a marketing idiot, right? There's not a lot of sway that you can do. If you can put in new video boards, and that's cool, people come out. But if you're paying $500 to, for a family of 4, people don't do it. It's a tough ask if they're not going to win, right? If they're winning, that kind of cures all the ills. But I think that's. Sorry, Faith. Go.
No, you're good. So, it's little things that people enjoy. The in-game entertainment beyond our theme nights, we've got about 18 and a half, 19 and a half innings that we have to worry about entertainment for every game. Chip's team is responsible for a lot of the sponsored inventory, the PA reads, and the special presentations on the field with our game sponsors. But in between that, we have other elements we have to do. We have about 4 half innings of sponsored content that we have to do with our mascot. There's all kinds of entertainment we add in with an on-field host, with sumo mats, and giant inflatable knocker balls. We're always looking for fun stuff that would get people of all ages engaged on the field between every half inning.
Yeah, last year, education day, I was in the sumo competition.
Oh, nice.
How'd you do?
I won.
Oh boy.
There you go.
This year, right? No way.
Yeah,
No,
so
Eric.
I don't believe that for a second.
our front office is made up of about 40
Did he
plus
win?
people, and that includes some trainees that come in and work for half the year, and then we have probably about 200, 300
That's a
seasonal
good
staff. And then my crew, we have a promo team that's probably about 10 to 15 people, and then we have a whole crew upstairs that manages our video boards, handles PA, replays, and all kinds of stuff. And that's probably about 15 more people. So we have to kind of focus on putting together a show in a sense, writing a script, planning out a timeline for every game, and then making sure everything is in sync together. Ashley kind of handles giveaways on our side. That's a big part of getting not only our season ticket holders engaged, but also our outside fans.
We have some giveaways actually, right? We do.
You want to talk about that a little bit? Yeah.
Well, I said we could talk about that, but first, I'm going to give some away. I don't know. Let's do this.
Maybe if you guys ask.
We have several streams of revenue. Can anybody tell me what streams of revenue that we have to make our organization run?
Ticket sales.
All right, ticket sales. Come get something you want.
E-commerce.
Retail, yes. Come get
Yeah.
something you want. Food and beverage, absolutely. Come on. Sponsorship, yep.
All the shirts are extra large.
Did we get them? Oh, there's one more, but you had your. He already said merch. Say again. That's going to fall under sponsorship.
He was gonna say that. He was gonna say that.
What was
You were gonna say that.
Yes, very good.
What did he
Events.
say?
Events.
Yeah.
Well done. So those are our 5 streams of revenue. But anyway, so those are our 5. Ashley will, I guess, answer some questions on e-commerce and retail, but that's we're bragging a little bit, right, for you guys, because
Go ahead.
what has it been, 25 years that you've been in the top 5 for minor league baseball for amount sold for retail. In the last couple of years, they've been the #1 team for retail sales in all of minor league baseball. Question, another giveaway, right? How many minor league baseball teams are there right now? I got 30. It's low, very low. 55? Very low. 63. Very low.
114.
Getting closer.
122. 135. 164.
Really, you know what? We'll go for the sake of not killing this. It's 160 teams.
Next guest, right?
And you would have been right if you said it.
Don't even want it, bro.
All right, sorry, retail, retail.
So, like I said before, just a little bit more elaboration. I work in the retail department. I'm the assistant director, and this year took over the e-commerce platform. Anybody tell me what e-commerce is? Right.
Anything that people buy online, online store,
Yeah, so it's like the online platform for selling is a good way to encompass what e-commerce is. And we've been on the same platform for a very long time, a very older platform that wasn't really user-friendly. That was something I saw in these questions. And we recently transitioned to Shopify Plus. Not sure how much everyone knows on Shopify Plus, but that's where a lot of vendors, a lot of companies are moving to better sell their product. Visually, customer friendly, checkout wise. So that's been a cool, exciting new thing for a retail department. Does anybody know what this past weekend was for retail? Like global? Cyber Weekend, Black Friday. It's become like a whole week-long experience. And so that was our big focus this past weekend. We're still processing. We had close to 300 orders online, and that does not include Black Friday sales. Black Friday sales are done in store. Online sales were close to 300. And that gets processed all by myself and my director, Brian. So noticing a couple of different companies that you guys have, a couple of brands, Nike, Under Armour, Majestic, we have Champion back there. Those are all vendors that we work with. We work directly with wholesale vendors who help us design and get all the product to us in time for opening day. One of the questions I saw in here was, do you rotate product? Do you change out your product? How often does that happen? We are kind of like any store you see in the mall. We have different products coming in different seasons. So we have our 2020 season products coming in probably around February. We order over probably 600 to 700 different hat styles that rotate through our store. And everything that is sold in our store, I say 99% of what's sold in our store is online, only because as soon as we get low on inventory, we take it off to better the customer experience. We don't want to sell something that we can't sell if it's sold out. So we work with a lot of different vendors, we work with a lot of different companies, and I guess part of what we were talking about just a couple minutes ago were giveaways. And I work with tickets, marketing, sponsorship, and all that capacity to get these products created, designed, and in time for season ticket holders, for our mini plans, a way of letting them know that we appreciate them and gifts to them for joining us for the next season. So that's kind of the capacity for tickets. Does anybody have like any specific questions on retail? I'm gonna pull a couple questions from the sheets you guys have if nobody has anything specific. All right, so one fun question I saw here was, why is merch so expensive? Can someone
I often wonder that too.
Can someone just make a shirt like that? Because there are some similar shirts in Walmart. What makes the ones at the game so expensive, and what is so special about that item? So like Chip was saying, we have been in the top 25, or we've been in the top 25 for the past 25 years.
Top 5.
Top 5 for the past 25 years. And we've been in the top 3 for the past 5. We've been the top 1 for the past 2. We haven't gotten this year's back yet, so I can't talk on that. But we get everything that's in our store is licensed. It is officially licensed by Minor League Baseball. If there's something in Walmart,
Which means what?
so that means that company has paid X amount to be a vendor for Minor League Baseball. It means that our gear is official through Minor League Baseball.
Everybody gets a cut, right? And it's a
If we're
scam.
talking
No,
about-
everybody's minor league baseball approves it, so therefore they get a cut of it. Everybody's
Like,
got their hand.
the logos are going to be the actual logos.
The
You
right
might be able to see
colors.
some janky stuff you might find it on a street corner or something like that, where the logo might be a little different color blue. I've seen the Duke logo on your shirt. They changed their logo a couple years ago with the spacing in the middle of the D, things like that. This will be official, actual merchandise.
So
Did you know about the space? I didn't know.
I will say the fun part about that is that even when other stores sell our stuff, we still get that cut. So if you buy something from Dick's Sporting Goods, we still see that profit. That is part of our end of year revenue that we get from Minor League Baseball. So not everything has to be sold in the store for us to get profit or online.
How much profit do you actually make a year if you don't?
A year?
Yeah.
Is that like something we can disclose?
We generally don't disclose that.
I will say we are up 60%. Yeah.
So they have a goal every month that they have to hit. And what is cool about minor league baseball, in my opinion, is you rely on other departments a lot for your success. So like merchandise just can't be successful by themselves. They've got to rely on social media and all those platforms that help advertise that product. Who follows in the room? Who follows us on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook? We got at least 2, right? Anybody else follow us on Instagram or anything?
All right.
Could,
Take
right?
your phones out and follow us.
Right.
If we approve.
And so that's how we reach a lot of our fans, and how that relates to Ashley is that's how we market a lot of our new gear that's come in, say for Christmas or for the next season. So that department does a lot to help Ashley and her department's sales each month as they go through the year.
Yeah. So that's a great kind of segue. Everybody works kind of all together to help the other departments. So as you've been hearing, we work with operations and tickets and marketing and sponsorship. Like none of this works without all those parts. So that's something I definitely want to mention.
Well, and I think that's more of a. Do you have a question?
Oh yeah, I was gonna ask you. It's kind of not about merchandise.
Okay.
That's fine.
All right. So like, how do y'all come up with the concession idea?
The menu?
Yeah.
So that's a great question. So how do we come up with the concession items? So we have a Dave Levy who works for us, and he has worked for the Padres and the Cardinals and the Rams and a couple other major league teams, and he comes in and he'll do food testing and food tasting. So we work through US Foods, which is a distributor of all of our food, and they'll come in and they'll help bring different products. They'll bring different ideas. We'll also get fan feedback. Fans are great because they don't always let us know what they love, but they do let us know what they hate. So we'll do a lot of surveys and they'll tell us, oh yeah, we hated this. So it's kind of they kind of self-regulate a little bit. And we really do pay attention to a lot of that feedback. But then also this is where sponsorship gets involved sometimes, because we'll go out and find a deal. We'll go out and find a deal with hot sauce, and so all of a sudden we're creating a dish to have that hot sauce. The other thing, going back to what Faith was talking about when we were trying to kind of capture a whole night and bring everything together, you've got jerseys that are, say Stranger Things, we've got jerseys that have waffles on them. And we've got all the graphics that have all the Stranger Things. We've got light bulbs and colored Christmas lights going around the stadium. But then we also have food. And so we had potato waffles that we made, and we had, they get incorporated. I'm trying to remember some of the other things Dave
Star
has done.
Wars, you had Yoda soda.
Yoda soda and
Things like that.
things like that. So creative. So you kind of take off that theme and it makes it really easy. When we have a theme, what's great about having a theme, it kind of organizes everybody, right? So you know, okay, I have this theme, food and beverage, we can do all these different kinds of things. For the graphics, for the in-game, you gear everything towards that night. For group sales, we know different nights are really lend themselves to be able to sell to certain groups. With the Faith and Family Night, go out and talk to all the churches, right? So all those things help organize our thoughts, gives people a reason to come, and it gives us a reason to back that up.
To expand a little bit on just what Chip was saying about how much the customer feedback means to us, for a number of years, it's all the way back to when this current ballpark opened, we used a national catering and food and beverage company to provide us all of our food in stadium. They made all the decisions, they took care of everything, and it left us not being able to be as creative as we can right now. Customer feedback over time was, hey, we want to see local foods, we want to see different variety, things like that. And probably 5 years ago, we made the decision, we're going to do it ourselves. We're going to hire people, we're going to hire executive chefs, we're going to hire a director of food and beverage, and we're going to make those decisions ourselves instead of having a national company go out and make those decisions for us. And that's what's led to being able to be where we're at right now from a food and beverage standpoint, and be creative on a nightly basis. Change our menu literally from one game to the next because we're going to do a special event in the stadium. So it's opened up a whole new world from our standpoint, from a marketing and being able to promote specific foods.
What's y'all's biggest sponsorships?
Yeah.
Like the most important?
The most important? Well, they're all important.
Well, I meant
Right,
like,
'cause
like the biggest ones, like if you got like Nike or Adidas, or like Pepsi or Coke.
Yeah, you
or
want to know
something like
what the biggest money ones, right?
Well, I mean, yeah, but you can't disclose that. So.
I'm not going to tell you how much, but I'm going to tell you,
Okay, yeah.
Blue Cross Blue Shield, Emerge Ortho, Pepsi, those are some of the bigger ones for sure.
Do you guys reach out to them to sell your product, or do they come to you guys?
So we do deals a lot of different ways. So a lot of times we have a sales staff. There's actually, 4 or 5 people in the sponsorship department. It should be 5, but we're light, so we have 4. We have sellers. They'll go out and they'll contact. And part of being a good seller, whether it's tickets or it's in sponsorship, is you've got to be able to prospect. You got to figure out who's going to be a good potential client, and then you got to figure out who you need to talk to. And so you got to go through a lot of times, maybe 10 people sometimes, to get to the right decision maker or the one that's going to be helped to influence. Right? So then you get there, and then you have a conversation. There's a lot of different ways that you can sell. There's a lot of minor league baseball teams that have package A, B, and C. It's like you do this, this, or this. That's never been our approach. We don't want to sell signs. We want to sell a solution. We want to solve a problem. If we can help you sell more product, then it's an easy answer to say yes with us, right? And so you have those kind of deals where we go out and then they just really just want to have marketing, and they want to have, it could be all the way from just a sign where it's just purely branding down to how do you interact with people on an individual basis. And then how do you collect data? How do you collect numbers and emails? All of that's really, really, really important. But then there's also the ones where we kind of leverage. We do business with you and you do business with us type of thing. So if you're our landscaper, say, wouldn't that
Purely
be great?
hypothetical here.
We know that you spend with our company a lot of money. Then we look to you and you're like, yeah, it'd be great if you spent some money with us. And it's just a little leverage. But people enjoy doing business with with us, and we enjoy doing business with them. So some deals are structured that way also.
I think a good point to tack onto right now is I assume that everyone in this room will want a job at some point, right? You have bills to pay, a family to raise, house, roof over your head, all that type of stuff. I don't think a lot of people realize all the jobs that are present when you go, for example, to a Durham Bulls baseball game, right? So you've heard a good number of them. But just because, we talk to people all the time, well, I'm interested in working in sports. Well, just because you might not be interested in working in sports doesn't mean you would want to work or not work for a sports team. So for example, right, if you're coming to a Bulls game, let's just think about all the different jobs and industries you interact with, right? So we've got seasonal employees, we've got full-time employees. Those are basically our two big breakdowns. We have a lot of full-time people that do work throughout the season, but the people that y'all actually interact with the most during a game are our seasonal employees, right? And we almost, this is a little bit of a blanket statement, we almost have two separate age groups that do a lot of that work. We have a lot of younger folks, interns, people that are in college, right out of college, looking for their first experience, some high school students, and then we also have a lot of retired folks who are retired from their main job, but aren't looking to sit at home the rest of their life, right? So when you come to a game, you have either bought a ticket or you haven't bought a ticket, right? So if you bought a ticket, odds are in that scenario, you work with someone in Brian's staff. Brian, you've got how many people on your full-time and seasonal training staff?
12 that are here throughout on any given day.
Average age?
Average age is going to be mid-20s.
Okay, right? So that's kind of something near y'all's immediate future, right? If you haven't bought a ticket, you go to the box office, which also falls under tickets, and you're buying from someone that's working at that box office. Odds are that person is looking for a seasonal job, looking to have some fun, and make a little money while they're doing it. Then you come into the stadium, you get your ticket scanned by more of Brian's staff. You come up, you enter the food world. The way our ballpark is laid out, that's kind of the first thing you see when you come into the stadium. And as a lot of people, how does that happen, right? Well, someone comes up with the idea of having that type of hot dog or that pizza brand, which happens to fall into sponsorship as well, because that's a sold entity that's serving pizza. There's staff that has to order all that food. There's staff that has to stock all that food. There's then staff that has to cook all that food. There's then staff that has to get that food from the cooking location to the stands. There's staff that has to maintain that stand so that when you go up to a line, the line isn't 50 people deep and takes you an hour to buy one hot dog just for you to go back to your seat, right? Then you come out into the stands, and that's when you see face work, right? All the video boards, all that content, the music, the PA reads, the product that's on the field in between innings. How many people on your staff, including seasonals? 30 people, right? That's a lot of jobs right there. Hopefully you've been welcomed to the ballpark as well by our seasonal staff that we call our Senior Bowl hosts, aka ushers. Most of those folks are retired folks who like getting out and interacting with people, right? There's a good number of questions about the field, which is interesting. I appreciate that. You see the field as well. The grass doesn't grow by itself.
You don't know, but Scott is one of the most renowned.
My agent.
Yeah, most renowned, and he no longer does it, but groundskeeper in minor league baseball. A lot of awards, a lot of recognition, has always done a phenomenal job. I think that's one of the two things that when people come out to the ballpark, they say, how do I get my grass to look like that? And that was always because of him. And then how do I get to drive the go-kart, which you can't. So
right.
Concentrate on the grass.
So there's kind of two things with the field, right? One, you want it to look good, right? So when you're sitting in the stands, it looks good. And two, which is more important than the first one, is the athletes that are on that field, some of them are getting paid over $1 million, right? So if you're a third baseman and you just signed a contract 3 years ago and you got a $5 million signing bonus and I'm the head groundskeeper, what's our relationship going to be like if a bad hop takes out one of your front teeth? Probably not very good, right? And so the Tampa Bay Rays, who you would work for in that scenario, they have a lot of standards that have to be met with the field. So it's got to look good and it's got to play well, right? So we have a lot of staff that are specifically in charge of maintaining that. And then we also have seasonal staff that help them during the year. A lot of high school coaches from around the area, a lot of kids that are at NC State looking to get into turf grass management or whatever the case may be are working on that staff. Additionally, during that, right, there's things that are on the video board, there's things that are on the signs around it. That's Chip's staff that he's just talked about that are out selling all those items. So there are a ton of jobs in quote-unquote sports that might not necessarily be 100% sports driven, right? Food and beverage, that's not just sports, right? You can do that throughout any type of industry. Additionally, we talked about how many games we have. We have 70, right? How many days are there in a year? Okay, so there's a lot of other days that we've got this beautiful big ballpark in downtown that needs to be utilized, right? So that's an additional revenue stream that I believe you mentioned with our special events, concerts, beer festivals that y'all can attend later in life. We have a club space where I joke about this, but also being serious, we host anything from funerals to weddings in that space. We have a special event every Monday that's a luncheon group, the downtown Rotary group. We have holiday parties this time of year. So we have a special events team and the food and beverage team help implement all those, which talking about the change and evolution of the business, that's something that totally did not exist, especially when our ballpark was being designed. When our ballpark opened, we didn't have a space that could hold this group. We didn't have an interior space that could hold half of this group. So we built a club space during the renovation to help bring in additional revenue throughout the rest of those days in the year. We've talked about revenue, we've talked about costs a little bit. There's a lot of questions on my sheet about costs. We won't talk about our total costs over the course of a year, but let's think about one thing that's kind of important to the game of baseball and help you do some math on that. So what do you have to be able to play baseball? You got to have a ball, right? You have to have a baseball to play baseball. How much do you think a baseball costs? We have $3. So our baseball,
I know y'all get it for cheap though.
we don't. So our baseballs are about $10 per ball.
We have the most regulated ball in any of these sports.
So that's an interesting question. Last year we had to use baseballs that were Major League baseballs. So every ball is a little different, mainly the height of the seam on the baseball. All right, that affects two things. One, what a pitcher can do with the ball, gripping wise, and then two, the actual resistance as it flies through the air. Okay, how many baseballs do you think we go through in one game? We're going to break this down by the dozen. Baseballs come in a box of 12.
About at least 3 boxes.
You're giving the speech for me. We're about 11 dozen baseballs per game.
Somebody doing the math?
Someone doing the math on that?
It's like
How many home games do we have? 70.
a ball lasts like 3 to 4 pitches.
Again, about $10 per ball.
A ball lasts like 3 to 4 pitches.
He's doing his math over here. We do that in one
Wait, isn't that right?
season. We go through, this past season, we went through 700 dozen baseballs.
84,000.
So, just in baseballs, that's a one-time cost of about 80 grand in one season.
But the good news, a lot
Okay.
of them are souvenirs.
That's
there you
correct.
Go, free souvenirs.
So that means Brian's staff and Chip's staff have got to sell a whole lot of seats and signs to pay for those baseballs, right? So that's kind of an interesting thing. Next time you go to a baseball game, right, and you're kind of watching it more than just the game, think about all those type things as you're sitting there. Think about all those type jobs. Think about all those costs, and think about all those revenue streams as you're sitting there, especially at this age, and that can help you determine whether or not you might want to pursue quote-unquote sports as a career as you get older.
We'd have to sell 8,000 outfield seats just to pay for the baseballs. We only have 1,200 outfield seats in our stadium. So that's, a week's worth of games in the outfield just to cover our baseballs, period.
One thing that a lot of folks don't necessarily know is what a minor league team pays for and what they don't pay for, right? So Tampa Bay, the players on the field, they don't work for us and we don't pay them. Tampa Bay fields, no pun intended, that roster and pays that roster. We split the baseball cost with them. We pay all the team travel. Team travel is a totally interesting thing that can drive Ashley's boss absolutely crazy. So how much do you think it costs to send the team to Syracuse and back?
A lot.
I wish. So, how do you think we get there? Do you think we drive a car? Do you think we fly? We fly sometimes.
You got
Sometimes we bus.
You fly privately?
Great question. We can't afford that, so the answer to that question is no. However, in the recession, people weren't chartering flights, so the charter flight business world dropped down one level. That's us. So in 2008, we chartered 3 or 4 flights. That was awesome. Some great stories with that. But that's how we got around a little bit during that time, those 2 years basically. But most of the time, our team prefers to bus to the location. So we'll get on 2 sleeper buses that have nice beds and the guys can sleep. We'll get on a bus at 11 o'clock at night, bus through the night to Indianapolis, Columbus, Buffalo, Syracuse, usually we fly to those. And we'll bus through there. How much do you think that those 2 buses cost? We're going through that budget process right now. About 27 grand.
For one game?
That's one
weekend
trip.
Yep.
Like there and back.
And then we got to pay for the hotels. Okay. So there's a lot. We don't have to pay for that. Tampa pays for that. Good question though. So again, think about all those type of things when you go to a game. That'll get you a little more interested and cure your great things to talk about in class.
What's the farthest team you guys travel to?
Buffalo, I believe, would be our longest trip.
I'll take it.
Right. So we go to we have 3 divisions. There's a lot of chatter right now about some restructuring in minor league baseball, and a part of that goes to that question of, for example, the Durham Bulls, right? Why are we going to Syracuse and Buffalo when we could just go to Greensboro, Winston, Zebulon, High Point, wherever the place may be, and come back? So we travel long distances. We're in the International League, even though we don't have any teams outside the United States. There's one other AAA league called the Pacific Coast League team. One would think that all those teams would be on the Pacific Coast, but New Orleans is in that, and Tacoma, Washington has a team in that.
Nashville.
Nashville's probably
Nashville's the closest one.
I got another.
to us. And
Yes, sir.
How do you think the talk of contracting minor league baseball that's going on right now is going to affect the Bulls?
Great question. It probably won't impact the Bulls that much. The bigger impact's going to be felt on the lower level teams, the rookie ball teams. That's something that's obviously getting a lot of attention right now, and we're definitely 100% standing by our fellow minor league baseball teams throughout the country. Think about, we're really fortunate to live where we live, right? We've got a lot of entertainment options within 10 minutes of your house, most likely, right? Well, there's a lot of towns in this country that have one option, and then that's it. They can't drive 1 hour or 2 hours to a Panthers game or to 15 minutes to a Hurricanes game. And so that minor league baseball team is incredibly important to that community. And that's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out. But obviously it's something that we're fully in support of the rest of our minor league teams on.
I said the other point on that is we're about to go into these large negotiations with Major League Baseball. And are they posturing? Is this one of their items that they've now put out there so they can then say, all right, we'll give you that, but you need to give us. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next, not that long, really.
Right.
Yeah, there's some neighbors here in the community or in our state that it's going to impact a lot more potentially. But one of the things that have shown that may impact us would just be the actual makeup of our league, impact where we travel to, introducing new teams or reshifting teams. That may be one of the things that we would see. But
Because I don't think we ever talk about the structure of minor league baseball. We know we have 160 teams, but your top tier team, AAA, which is us, we're one step below majors. We have 30 teams. AA also has 30 teams, so that's 60. So the rest of the teams make up single A, and there's short season and long season, and a lot of different teams that make up that. But Scott's right. I mean, what Durham used to be when the movie was made 31 years ago? Right. That's hard to believe, right? It was that town was all about that baseball team. That was the only source of entertainment. And a lot of these smaller baseball teams are like that for their communities. They mean a lot to the community. The Durham Bulls still mean a lot to Durham. It has always meant a lot to Durham. But some of these teams probably mean a little bit more at this point.
So with that, imagine you just purchased that team within the last 2 or 3 years. So anyone in here have a car? Let's use this as an example. Okay, well, someone probably bought that car for you. So what if someone just said, I'm taking that car away from you? Okay, that's what's going to happen to some of these lower level teams. People have bought these teams, they own them, right? And then, poof, you don't have a team anymore. So imagine you're an employee working for one of those teams right now. All right, let's say you're the chef for the Burlington Royals. And 10 months from now, you might not have a job. So what do? Do you work this season? Do you try to start getting another job someplace else? What if you're the groundskeeper? Do you go jump ship and go work for a landscape company? There's a lot of, there's real life domino effects that this is going to have. Yes, sir.
Who's the one taking the jobs away?
So Major League Baseball essentially controls a lot of that. And they are wanting to remove about 26% of the minor league teams that currently exist.
So are they gonna like buy it out?
No, they would just not.
So
It's kind of complicated, but they would not have players, so they would not field a team. They would not send you any players.
Because remember, Major League Baseball, they pay all the players no matter what level they're in. So they control that side of it. And if they say, yep, we're not gonna pay 25, 30 more players, your team's done.
our standpoint, a real easy comparison, we are like a school. We operate the building, we maintain it, we've got the staff to run it. But Major League Baseball and all the teams, they loan us their players for 6 months. And this proposal would shrink the number of players that each team is allowed to have at any one point. And so if they stop sending players to that team, that facility ceases to exist. So if all of a sudden, parents stop sending you to this school, there's a lot of people here who don't have jobs anymore because they're impacted by how many people are in this building on any given point. So that's one of the That's one of the big hurdles that they're talking about through these renegotiations. Is if they shrink the number of players per organization that can have, there isn't a need to have as many teams anymore.
Oh, good, lots of questions. Yeah.
Have y'all ever thought about going major league?
I'm talking about us as employees or as the team itself.
We think of ourselves as Major League.
No, we're AAA and a half, really. That's a much more complicated question. There's been some movement over the past few years to bring a Major League team to Raleigh. But it's more than that. You got to figure out if there's enough people here that will attend the game. You got to figure out if there's enough sponsors that will pay for the signage and the stadium and all of that. And quite frankly, from a sponsorship point, this area is not great because we have a lot of business-to-business companies, a lot of pharmaceuticals and IT, but not consumer products, not really consumer-facing in that way. And so you don't see a lot of that money coming into stadiums. If you went to Atlanta, you've got the Coke headquarters there, right? And that's a huge draw and a lot of money. And you go to Dallas and there's a ton of Fortune 500 companies with consumer products. So those are some of the better areas for it. So when you start to look at the landscape here, it's tough because you look at the Hurricanes. Hurricanes is a good example in the soccer team. The Hurricanes, when they weren't doing well, people didn't fill that. They didn't fill it. And so you look at that and you say, well, are people willing to go even if it's not a great season? Because you make or break on ticket sales. Everything else is fluff, but you got to have the tickets to make it work. And then the soccer, we've been trying to get a Major League Soccer team in this area for a couple of years now, right? And they announced that they were going for that, and they actually went from about average of 3,500 fans a game to about 3,400 fans a game. It didn't have an impact. There wasn't enough interest. And so it's a tough ask to bring another Major League player into this market, particularly knowing that you've got NC State, you've got UNC, you've got Duke, we are a college area, first and foremost. And so it's tough competition to go in and say, we're now going to bring in a Major League team. So could it happen? Sure. We have a lot more growing, I think, to do in this area before that could ever happen.
I look at our state, and yes, we got a lot of people in the Triangle. There's a lot of people in Charlotte too. There's a lot of people in Greensboro. There's a lot of people in Fayetteville. These are a little bit of a distance to travel. If there was a Major League team in Charlotte, are you going to drive regularly to go see that team? Probably not from here. So other cities that may not have as much competition within their own state may stand a better chance than us right now until this population grows and kind of establishes itself as the one spot within our state. You got a few areas that kind of compete with each other in growing in size.
I'd say a really good example though is Charlotte. Charlotte has a lot of the Major League teams where we have minor league teams and then we have college teams. And so the two different areas, we were much more suited for the college because we have so many colleges. Because they don't have the colleges, they are much more suited for Major League teams.
North Carolina has 11 minor league teams right now, and as Scott was saying, the Burlington Royals are one of them that could potentially be eliminated. There's another AAA team in Charlotte, and then all different levels throughout the state. So there's a strong baseball presence throughout the entire state. We have 2 AAA teams, which is great. But like they were saying, every city has its own entertainment in a sense, and you're having to drive across the state if you're gonna pick and choose. Like going to a Panthers game, I imagine most people here, if you guys go to any football games, it might be one a year. So that's one thing to think about.
Have a good night.
The team,
Look at both of you.
Go ahead and get back there too. So good, yeah, ask questions.
so when like the teams get eliminated, this can like help you guys. I heard you know that.
It's a very good point. Yes, in that scenario, people from Burlington, if they want to go to a baseball game, if they can't go to Burlington for a baseball game, they're going to go elsewhere, right? So there might be a small benefit there, but not a huge one.
Not as big as you might think. I mean, minor league baseball teams, because they're the size that they are, they're very engrossed in that community. That's where most of your people are going to come from. Bulls are a little bit different because we have people that will make a trip out for 1 or 2 games a year because we're the Bulls. And so they'll come from a much longer distance. But Hillsborough will get, it's a small percentage. I mean, it would help us. I don't think it would hurt us.
How do you guys compare like with like other?
We're the best.
You're the best.
Yeah. Yeah. No, in what way? I'm sorry.
Like, I guess like with your like marketing and all that stuff, like y'all like everybody else.
That's a great question.
Well, go ahead.
Ashley and her department, they've literally been the best. So that's a literally,
Yeah,
Yeah.
number
not
one for
joking,
2
they've literally
years,
been
yeah.
the best in terms of sales. Our ticket department and some of the, one thing we haven't really gotten into is kind of how a ticket is sold, like literally the software that's used and the plans that are come up with. We don't just say, hey, buy 1 ticket and talk to you later. That structure, we're looked upon very, very favorably throughout the rest of not just minor league baseball, but professional sports as well. You know, we kind of talked about this a little bit. Our market really isn't one of the biggest AAA markets, right? So there's plenty of other AAA teams that sell far more tickets than we do in Indianapolis, for example, but it's just a bigger market. There's more people
And they also have a
there.
bigger stadium.
Right, they have a bigger stadium, and therefore they have a bigger staff, and all these things tied together. But we're looked upon very favorably in a lot of different areas for just the general things we do on a day-to-day
I was going
basis.
to say, even 5 years ago, we won, what was the Johnson Award for the best organization over, I guess it was the best organization that year.
Right.
We get a lot of those kind of awards. We're looked to in the rest of the community as leaders because of the marketing, because of the innovation that we usually bring. We're one of the ones to usually bring on new technology.
on our social side, in 2018, I forget the actual category, but we had the most views and most interactions in Instagram and Twitter than any minor league team in the country.
I think our community helps us in a lot of that kind of stuff. Being number 1 in online retail, we're number 1 in online ticket sales this past year. I think having a smart, tech-savvy community has helped us be at the top of where we are with a lot of things. We may not be number 1 in attendance, but we were number 1 in online ticket sales for most tickets sold in minor league baseball. So again, I think a lot of it is helped by you guys and people coming out to our stadiums too.
Yeah, one of the really, really cool things that exists at a Bulls game. Think about the last time you went to a Bulls game and how much Bulls merchandise you saw people wearing. Hats, t-shirts, sweatshirts, whatever the case may be. You go to a Charlotte Knights game, for example, you might be sitting on a row of 20 seats and maybe only 2 of you, or maybe even 1 or 0, are wearing the Charlotte Knights brand. A lot of people buy into the Durham Bulls brand, and obviously that impacts Ashley and her world a ton. Yes, sir?
Who's got the hardest job?
That's the hardest job. Oh, I can tell you that.
I'll
nobody
pick
standing
them up
here.
on that. It's sales. It's the sales world has the most
I didn't
difficult
see that either.
job in my mind because
Are you talking like selling to somebody's harder?
yes, well, it's more so it's very easily you can very easily hold them accountable.
It's
In
black
some of
and
the
white.
jobs, it's a little harder to see what they accomplished or didn't accomplish. If you're a salesperson and you have a goal of making, or not a goal, but a mandate of making 60 phone calls a day, and you have a goal of selling $100,000 worth of tickets, All right, well, if you only make 5 phone calls a day and you only sell 20 grand worth of tickets, well, guess what's going to happen to you? You're going to get fired, right? And so it's very black and white on what your success is and what your areas that you're not successful in. You know, that's y'all will find this out later in life. You probably have it a little bit in class already when group projects and stuff. It's very easily seen who the people that care and who the people that don't care are. Who the people that do the work and who the people that don't do the work. In sales, it's very, very easy, especially when we haven't talked about this kind of the analytic side, of the world. Everyone's tracked. You can see the number of phone calls you make, the number of people you talk to, the number of minutes you're on the phone. And so that's where I think just from an everyday, that's a lot of pressure, right? You get behind, you have one bad week, hell, you get sick, right? That impacts how much, and that also impacts how much money you're taking home on the commission side. That's a very
I said, but on the flip side
interesting
too,
thing.
if you go into sales and you don't meet your numbers, there's a lot of pressure. If you make your numbers and you go above your numbers, and you get a lot of leeway. And all of a sudden you're like, I'm gonna go hit some golf balls, and I'm gonna go do something else for a little bit. But I'm selling, but that's sales. The pressure's huge, but once you get over it, man, it's kind of like, all right, I set my own schedule.
That was actually one of the questions you guys asked us about ticket sales. You know, if you sell, are you getting paid on that? Yes. Pretty much everywhere you go, from our standpoint, you're going to get paid for how well you do. So you know, everybody in our ticket sales department, they have a base pay because we have to. But then after that, nobody wants to work for free. I mean, that's the end all be all that. But you know, you're going to get paid a percentage of every ticket that you sell. So you know, a person who sells 50,000 tickets versus a person who sells 25,000 tickets, they're going to get paid differently because the person who sold 50,000 tickets made more money because they sold more tickets, plain and simple. And it works the same way with sponsorship sales. And so, yeah, I mean, the better you produce at your job, the better you're going to be off financially moving forward. That was a great question. That was
And that is a great question, and no other position really has that. There's bonuses and things like that you can achieve. But in sales, you can you want to raise, sell more.
Sell more.
It's that simple. You want to make more, work harder. Yeah.
How do you find people for the first pitch or the national anthem?
How do we?
Yeah, so
Well, boom.
that actually kind of piggybacks with sales. So we're fortunate enough, one of our ticket reps, Cassie, handles basically big groups for national anthems. Some individual as well, but we can kind of use that as a ticket revenue avenue. So if you wanted to bring out a choir or a chorus from a school, you could pay for X amount of tickets, 20, 30 people, and actually have them sing the anthem. And then we hold some dates for special appearances if we have a big name person come to the area that might be able to sing, or just a local celebrity who has a good voice.
Or sometimes of a sponsor that's really important to them. And we don't do a lot of first pitches just because you go to some minor league baseball teams and they're doing 20 first pitches a game, which is ridiculous, right? We'll do how many on a season?
Probably 5 to 8.
We don't do a lot. One, a lot of our fans aren't there yet. Two, we want to keep it special. So when there is a real reason to do it, it means a little bit more.
Would you guys expand your stadium
That's a tricky question. From a sales standpoint, yeah, we always want to find ways to get more people in the ballpark. From an operations standpoint, a bigger stadium means more expenses, more revenue, more expenses, more staff, all that kind of stuff, more things to clean up, more things to maintain. However, we're in a spot where there isn't a whole lot of space for us to go. We're surrounded by buildings. We got two major streets on either side of us, and then office buildings cover the rest of it. So we don't have a whole lot much more room to spread our wings. You can go to, perfect example, probably none of you have been there, but Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania is just outside of north of Philadelphia. The AAA team do about the same as us in attendance, but they've got a huge plot of land where they've got parking lots all around the stadium, and they could, anytime they want, they could just grow their stadium and they can expand their footprint, get more sections, more picnic areas, more things like that to make their stadium bigger and get more people in it. We're landlocked now.
But here's also the problem with that is we know how many people come. And can we get more people on our Fridays and Saturdays? Yeah, we could. But what do our Monday through Wednesdays look like? You know, a lot of our season falls still into the school, and so a lot of folks don't come out. And so your average attendance on a Monday through Wednesday is more like 6,000 versus the sellout of 10,000. So how does that look? If you expand it, all of a sudden your Monday through Wednesday kind of feels empty, and then you kind of lose some of that experience. It doesn't matter when they come out. You want people to have a great time and feel like there was good energy and a good experience in the ballpark.
Since we can't always expand, it forces all of us to work together to get creative with the options that we have in the stadium, and that's how we can. That's how we thrive a lot of times. Is we can provide new opportunities that didn't exist the year before, but still use the same infrastructure that we have within the stadium. Find new little corners of the ballpark that we can, put food and beverage in, or throw some tables and chairs, and create a new, unique environment and new vantage point to watch the games from.
So, example on that, we opened a new kiosk this past season. We worked with New Era on them providing us a kiosk that opens out, and we were able to fit probably 10 shirts, a dozen novelties, and 35 to 40 hats. And so getting people on the concourse where you get your ticket scanned, you see the store, and then you go to your seats. So if you want to go find your seat or get your food, you're missing the store for most of the game. So getting on the concourse, getting in front of people as they're walking to their seats, as they're waiting in line for food, kind of pulls that in for retail-wise. So that was the way that we utilized. We can't build another store, but we can work with one of our vendors, New Era, to provide us a kiosk, a moving kiosk that we can utilize for groups if we want to move it over to left field. And right now it's stationed in a certain place, but that was the way that we expanded without having to build anything.
Right, and when you do a deal like that, understand too, when New Era comes in and says, we're going to give this to you, it's not without a price, because the product that they have to sell there is New Era product, as you would imagine. So that's the kind of the caveat to that. Anybody else have any? How much time do we have?
Got about 20 minutes until.
Okay, so we still have lots of questions we can answer. Good.
So what's the most unique way
So the most unique way we do what?
when you're shipping someone, like here I used to work with like playing golf in New Zealand,
The most unique way that we do sponsorship.
Sport Durs?
Huh?
Sport Durs?
Sport Durs was kind of cool because do you guys know Sport Durs? It's a car dealership that has several different lines of Jeep,
Yamaha.
ton of different stuff. But they would come on and they had a very charismatic guy that used to run he was the GM. And so he would come out, Ken Nichols, he's now in Tennessee, in case anybody wants to go buy a car. He would come out and he would do this game, and we'd have a car that would go around the track. And you could win that car if you could throw a baseball through a little tiny hole, and you were really far away. But what made it, so we would when we first started doing it, we would carry insurance. So in case anybody did this, we could pay for the car and everything would be fine, right? Because you can pay a little bit just in case something like that happens. But you would have to be that distance, and you would have to throw 3 balls through that hole to get it done. Ken didn't really like that. He was like, nope, that's too far. Come up here, get closer, get closer. And they would throw the ball, they missed the first time, closer. Maybe missed the second time, but the third time you're so close, throw it through, and he would end up giving away, what, $1,000 each night to do that. And that engagement, because it was so different, and because people were winning something of that magnitude, everybody was paying attention. That guy would walk around the stadium, and everybody knew. Everybody wanted to talk to him. He would also buy on lightsabers, right? For Star Wars night, we'd sell these lightsabers in the store, and he would buy boxes, and then he'd just go out and hand them all out. So part of those activations and part of those sponsorships, it really depends on the group you work with. Like a Lowe's Foods are incredibly creative, and they're willing to try almost anything, and we kind of brainstorm. And then there's some people that just want to sign. And then there's some people like Ken Nichols who have such a big personality, they really bring a lot of it to life. Because the components are, we have a lot of space and we offer a lot of one-to-one interactions, but it's how do you fulfill on that? And if you're there and you're trying to talk to people, but you're sitting behind your table and you just got your phone on, and you're not talking to people, it's a horrible experience. But if you're out in front and you're giving stuff away and you're having conversations, all of a sudden that elevates that giveaway quite a bit. So it's a lot on the execution more than it is on just the standard song.
I think from our standpoint, the ballpark itself, I think we have one of the most unique sponsorship opportunities that puts a lot of pressure on that team every year is the Snorting Bull in left field. You hit bull, you win steak. I mean, that stems from the movie. Player hits the bull, player's winning a steak dinner, and so is a fan. So every year we've got to find somebody that's going to be able to fulfill that from our standpoint too, and that's not something that every ballpark has either. And so that's one. We've got a few unique opportunities in our stadium like that I think really helps solidify us and put unique spins on some of the things that we can do too.
What revenue stream? Okay, so up for grabs, whatever you want. What revenue stream at the ballpark, one of the 5, is our largest? What is it? Ticket sales. It was not last year.
Sponsorships.
Right? It was not. It should be.
It should be.
It should be. It was not. Anybody else?
Sponsorships.
Who said it? You both said it. Come on, get some concessions. However, you get. Did you say concessions, Steve? Ah, all of you, come on.
We got stuff.
So the crazy thing is,
The bobsled.
Yeah, Ali.
what do you want? You want something different?
Would not be a good baseball player.
Good thing we don't throw hats.
But he didn't drop the hat. So, but it may have been the largest revenue, but it was not the most profitable department, right? Because you think about with food and beverage, you've got to buy all of that. You've got to buy the food to make it. You've got to pay the people to make it. You've got to buy the alcohol. You've got to buy the Pepsi, all that product, right? So you're actually, it's not the most profitable, but it was the biggest. Yeah.
Who you charge security?
In charge of security? That man right there.
How do you manage that stuff? Like,
That's a really good question. Yes, Scott?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
It gets very complicated. There's many different levels to it. I would honestly tell you one of my first responses to you would be, as a result of kind of being in charge of that, I pretty much don't trust anybody anymore. I mean, you see people that are, that you think you know, and you see people do some crazy stuff when you're the person that looks at security cameras to find out what happened, where that sign went or where that jacket went. A couple years ago, we had a sign vendor that was in there installing signs. Saw a jacket. This jacket looks good. Tries it on. We're watching this on camera. He wore it at the ballpark the next day, and then claimed he didn't take it. And so there's all these different levels, right? There's the right now when there's no games going on and our staff is there and trying to be a secure environment for that. We're kind of a part of the American Tobacco campus, and so we actually have our own security company that's 24/7 all throughout the ballpark. We have a bunch of security cameras watching the place. We have a great relationship with the Durham Police Department. One thing about having a cool venue is a lot of people like to sneak into that cool venue. They'll jump fences, they'll run around the field. I don't think they realize at the time that they're doing that they're about to get arrested.
You ever had anybody run the field?
Oh yeah.
Really?
Yeah, and they go to jail.
Is it banned for education?
And you're banned for life. Yes. And so there's some very interesting things that come with that. But also, obviously the bigger picture, probably what you're asking is the day of a game, and measures that we have. And so we have bag checks. We have an outside company that does that. And so you're checking your bag as it comes in. That's actually twofold. That's security, but also what that's also checking is if you're bringing in food from Mellow Mushroom, a piece of pizza in your pocketbook or something. And so that's cutting that out as well. Sneaking in a drink, things like that. Sneaking in alcohol. When the college kids come, that's oftentimes what we find, is we're finding alcohol all over the place. But then we have a set number of police officers that are throughout the ballpark. We've been, knock on wood, we've been pretty lucky in terms of people don't run on the field during a game. That's probably going to happen now as soon as the season starts. I said that. And so mainly that is, that's a prevention thing from being a deterrent. We have them in certain locations. So when someone's driving by or walking up and maybe perhaps thinking about something, that's going to scare them away from doing that. And scare them away from even trying to attempt to get into the facility. And then also just a big peace of mind as you're throughout the ballpark and you're walking around, that should you have a problem, most of the time what the police are doing in our world is responding to medical situations, and helping those folks out. You have so many people at a ballpark Oftentimes it's hot. We have a ton of dehydration and people passing out. Occasionally we'll have a heart attack. Those are obviously really scary situations, and those folks are obviously trained in responding to that, and they work alongside our EMTs to handle those situations. But it's a complicated issue. We're always looking at doing different things: metal detectors, no metal detectors, dogs, no dogs. I have a meeting next week, actually, or 2 weeks, excuse me, with a company that provides canines. They're at PNC, they're at the DPAC, they're at those locations, sniffing for bombs and sniffing for weapons. So an ever evolving world there. So we're lucky to get a little too deep. The buildings surrounding us, we own those buildings. Our parent company owns those buildings. So our security company is locking those buildings down at 5 o'clock, 5:30, whatever. Those are key card access buildings. And so we know who's in those buildings, as opposed to some places you might not know who's running that building.
There's like those buildings around you. Can't you guys like take them down and expand your stadium?
Good question. We would not take down any of those buildings because the revenue that those buildings are bringing in is far, far greater than a baseball ticket or a hot dog.
Yeah, I say.
We bring
I
in
don't
some
know if
money,
the
but
stat is
they
still
bring in a
true,
lot.
But 5 years ago, the highest square foot rent in the Triangle was in Diamond View 2, which is center field.
Yeah,
Yeah.
those are occupied 365 a year, while we have 70 games. So.
One odd thing to kind of go along with that question, though, is our outfield seats. If you sat in those during the summer, you probably got hit by a lot of sun. So one thing that we've looked at a couple times and we're continuing to look at is, can we do anything with the neighboring buildings to block some of that sun? Can we put up a billboard that would give 15 more minutes for the shade, or whatever the case may be? So those are kind of the things that we work with. The newer buildings that are being built behind right field, the one that's being finished right now, they're actually going to have a rooftop bar that will overlook the ballpark down into the stadium. So that's kind of interesting how the ballpark is affecting the real estate around the stadium.
So I got two. So what's your craziest security story?
Ooh.
And then the other one is like, have y'all ever thought of making like an arena? Like a baseball arena?
Two good questions.
Like a
The first one, I can actually talk about this because the individual made it public.
Repeat the question, Scott.
What is the most interesting security question or security situation we've had? So 2 years ago during our playoffs, we were playing the Toledo Mud Hens. The first 2 games were on the road at Toledo. The next 3 games were at the DBAC. It is customary in minor league baseball for, if you have a starting pitcher that's going to start the next night in another town, to fly them to that town ahead of time so they don't have to ride the bus 12 hours to the middle of the night. So for example, we flew our game 3 starter from Toledo to Durham at like 5 o'clock that evening, the night of game 2. Toledo did the same thing. Have you been to Tobacco Road out in Left Field restaurant? Okay, when Toledo's pitcher got to Durham, or landed at the airport, took an Uber to the stadium, went to dinner at Tobacco Road. He had never been in the DBAT before, and about 10 o'clock he felt like, I'm gonna take my own little tour of the field. So he hopped a fence, he went out on the bullpen mound, acted like he was pitching. He actually had not been drinking, which is the odd part to this. He then went to the game mound, pitched, and acted like he just won the World Series. He's raising his arms like this and twirling around, which we obviously all got on camera. Our security company saw it. We have motion detectors that got set off. They called 911. They said, we have a breaking and entering in progress. Going back to the one comment I made, we have a really good relationship with the Durham PD. They care about our ballpark a lot. They care about us a lot. Evidently the city was very quiet that night. We had like 9 officers swarm the ballpark, including one of our guys who has a canine with him. They caught him in the left field corner, had him handcuffed. He was going to jail. Therefore, he probably wouldn't be able to pitch the next night, right? Meanwhile, our game in Toledo ends. Starts at 7 o'clock, gets over with about 10 o'clock. We're loading the bus. The police department and our director of security are calling my cell phone as I'm loading onto the bus. and like, hey, we've got this pitcher. He says he's a pitcher for Toledo, but why would he be here? Y'all are in Toledo. He should be in Toledo. What should we do with him? We let him go because we weren't going to be that mean to him. But what we did do is the next night, as he was being introduced as the starting pitcher for Toledo, we played the Cops theme song on the PA system. Now, the crowd had no idea what was going on, but both dugouts just died laughing. The guy kind of tipped his cap in embarrassment. No one talked about that this past year for spring training. He came out in the press and actually told the story. He was going to be their opening day, Tigers opening day starter, asked if he can be flown ahead of time, and his team joked, no, we can't fly you ahead of time because you might break into the stadium and get arrested. So that's that question. The last question, which was, have we ever talked about essentially building a dome stadium? At the minor league level, that would be cost efficient. The Rays have actually looked at some ways of building an outdoor stadium with some sails above it, so not having to go through the expense of putting in a roof. But I would imagine within the next 15, 20 years, there will be a minor league team that has some type of a cover over the field, one to protect from sun and two to protect from rain.
I have 3 questions. Real quick ones. Are the Bulls going to extend the netting on the field for this coming year?
Question was, are the Bulls going to extend the protective netting on the field? That's obviously a very popular topic right now, hot topic. I would say honest answer to that is we have, I'd say for the last 6 years, we spend a ton of time every year evaluating our backstop netting and whether or not it's sufficient, not sufficient, what are other teams doing, what's too much, what's not enough, how tall should it be, should it be knotless, should it not be knotless, all those type things. And that's something we're reviewing right now for next year.
What do the Bulls do for sensory challenged individuals?
Chip, you want to talk about that one? Because that's kind of a neat answer how we
Well,
can impact a lot of different
That
departments.
actually falls under the sponsorship department. One of our sellers had come, his wife actually works in that industry. He got connected and we ended up, I think last year was the first year we did it, and we created a safe area. So we took one of the suites, and we created a whole area where kids who are sensitive to noise or just the commotion, and made a safe place for them to go while they were at the game. What we also did was put together, I think it was 10 bags, and so in that bag you can go to fan assistance, and in that bag there's earphones and several other things to help kids or adults, whoever's having that issue, calm down and keep out the noise, in different ways to handle it. We also had everybody on our staff get trained on how to handle those situations. And so we went from knowing zero, doing nothing, to I think a really great program. We worked with this company to make sure it was great and that it was very inclusive. So I think it was a huge success. We got a lot of great feedback. We'll continue doing that for next year, but we also, I think that last year we had one game where we had a particular night where it was designed for that. We had the stuff for all the games, but we'll be doing that again in the same kind of fashion this year.
One of the biggest elements of that was if you have a sensory issue in your family or know someone who does, a lot of those times those families are looking for ways of being quote unquote normal, right? They want to go out and have a good time just like everybody else. Through that program, we're able to market to those folks, hey, we've got ways of you entering the ballpark that aren't as loud as other areas. We've got some corners where you can go hang out and it's not as loud as other places in the stadium. We've got options should there be an issue during the game that can help calm that loved one that you have, again, to make it welcome to come to the ballpark.
The training piece, which is all done online, was not mandatory for our staff to do. I mean, we made it available. The amount of our game day staff that did it and said, yes, I want to know because we get so many questions about it, was incredible. And the feedback was almost instantaneous. From once we started hearing thank yous from fans, almost immediately from when we initiated all that. So.
And then the last question, the magic question is, if any of my students are really interested and passionate in getting into the sports business, how do they maybe, as high school students, intern, or when they get into college, intern or apply?
Yeah, I'll take that one. That's one of my fun ones. I love talking to folks about people who may be interested, and it's okay if you don't know what you want to do yet. As Scott was alluding to earlier, We cover everything from sales and marketing, graphic design, parking, operations, you name it. If you can think of a job, we could probably find a way to make it work in our stadium. One of the big things that we find with students is they're thinking about those type of opportunities as they're getting ready to graduate. So they're thinking about that in April and May. Well, our season has already started. We've already got folks in place. Not to say that we can't bring on more people. We've got to back up the thinking process. We start hiring in January. So we will have a job fair at our ballpark, usually the last Saturday in January. We start posting jobs now-ish, and we lead up to this massive career fair at our ballpark. We have everyone from high school students through retirees out at our stadium. A lot of times what we see with high school and college students, it's folks who are in these classes, they like it, they want to find a fit for themselves in the future. It is a great way to come out and test drive. You don't have the commitment of a full-time job after after you've graduated. You come out for a couple months during the summer, work in operations. Come out the next year. Oh, I'm going to work in the box office and do ticket sales, or I'm going to work in the game ops room and learn how to do music and video board and video production and all that kind of stuff. You can test drive a bunch of different things over just a couple of short years, a couple of short seasons with us while you're still in school. But you got to be a little proactive with it. We start hiring in January because not only do we have Bulls baseball, we're the home for Duke baseball as well. So our stadium opens up in mid-February for baseball games. So we get a lot of areas like operations, ticket sales, things like that. We've got to have people in place well before spring starts. We got to have them there in the winter. Stores open all year round. We're selling all year round. There are other roles that are a little bit more seasonal and only during the summer months when the stadium is open. But there's other roles that are daytime, nighttime, weekends, the whole 9 yards. So you can get a lot of different experiences in a very, very short amount of time. It's a great opportunity, whether it's us, you go out east to the Carolina Mudcats or anybody. You can really get some hands-on experience in a quick amount of time by just deciding to have a summer job, and everything at our ballpark is paid. Every job is paid. We don't have unpaid internships in our stadium.
Here's what we look for. We look for max effort. We always want people that want to put in as much effort as they can. Friendly and solve problems. Those are the three things I always look for. It's not that difficult. We're not doing brain surgery, but we are creating an atmosphere where we're trying to create an unbelievable guest experience. It's all about fan experience. And so how do you do that? You solve problems, you smile, you're friendly, and you put forth the effort. That is what it takes to succeed.